Is playing a college sport really for you? In this video, we're going to break down what my weekly schedule looked like as a D1 baseball player, whether it was in the fall or in season during the spring. We're going to outline everything it was and all the hours that was required of me. And by breaking this down, I hope this gives you a perspective on whether or not you actually want to play a college sport or you want to do it because you think it's cool. I think that a lot of people don't understand what's required of you. They sort of jump in without knowing. And this is going to give you a pretty good idea of what it's like and what you guys are going to be asked to do as a college athlete if that's something you want to pursue. So with this, basically, we're going to go through what it looked like on a weekly for me as a baseball player. Baseball is obviously a little bit more involved than some of the other sports because we play a lot more games. Most people, it's between 55 and 65 games, I'd say. Obviously, other sports are a little different, more practice focused, and then you randomly have games here and there, maybe once, twice a week. Obviously, football is one time a week. Basketball, you guys are playing like 2 to 3, and then some of the other sports, it's only like 1 or 2. So this is what my schedule looked like. Every week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we had lift between 5:30 and 6 o'clock at the start time, and it would go till 7:15. That was a every week occurrence, 3 days a week. We're up there. We got to get up at 5, go lift, start the day. Then we got practice. That was always 1 to 5, Monday through Friday. And then Saturday, Sunday, we would scrimmage. One of those days would be off during the week. Usually it was because of rain or something. We would pick that day as the day off because NCAA, there's rules. You can only practice 6 times a week. But nonetheless, it's a busy schedule. So you got basically that looks like when you're considering everything that it takes from waking up to being done with lift, and then you have to turn it all around, shower quick, and run off to class. It's looking at about 2 hours involvement for lift, even though you're in there for an hour 15. And practice, got to get there early. It starts at 1, but you're always there at like 12:30 unless you had class. And it's going to end at 5, but then you got to pick up, and then you're going to be in the locker room a little bit. You can factor that to being instead of 4 hours, 5 hours realistically in terms of what it takes just naturally, organically, how it kind of goes. So that's 2 hours, 5 hours. That's a 7-hour average day, what's required of you for baseball. And then as a freshman, and if you don't get good grades, another thing you have to do is mandatory study hall. Obviously, some schools, no matter what grade you're in, what your grades are, you have to do this. So obviously, you're kind of going to study on your own anyway. But at our school, you were required to go 6 hours. And obviously, it's tricky because there's not a lot of hours open. You're busy. You're flat out from the moment you wake up till pretty much when you go to bed. Because some days, at our school at least, we had night classes too. So not every day, but sometimes, like once or twice a week, depending on how many night classes you had, you'd have one day where it's at least a 6 to 9 because it's a 3-hour class and you only meet once a week. So you got that going on. It doesn't leave a lot of time. When you factor in the fact that you got school, you'll probably have 2 to 3 classes a day minimum. Maybe some days you'll have 4, factoring in that night class. That could be easily up to 6 hours of your day. It's very grueling, long, and then on top of it all, you want to perform when you're playing too. So you got to be locked in on recovery, going to see the trainer when you can find time that matches when they're available as well. And if you want to do extra work, because everybody else is doing the stuff that you're doing at practice, if you want to factor in doing extra work, you got to factor in time for that being a thing as well. So it's quite a bit of work. You got to be pretty locked in, and that's just in the fall. So another part to add regarding the fall is pretty much that weekly routine that we just described is what you'll follow from the time you get on campus in the fall, like August for most schools. Some schools like my school, you get there first week right after Labor Day. You'll be doing that exact routine from then till at least Thanksgiving. And then when you come back after Thanksgiving, it's finals time. So at that point, there's like a kind of quiet period. They call it individuals. And with individuals, you're only allowed 8 hours a week with the kids. So some of that is obviously factored into lifting. So you still do your morning lifts, but practice time can't be as much. So that time of the year, it's more small groups, hour each, and you're doing more like development focused, very structured with your throwing. Sort of you're building up, you're on ramping because you got to be ready to go for February. So that really ties in what it's looking like when you're out of season. That's the fall. Then when you get back in the spring, so with, I guess, you probably have like a month or so right before the season starts. So I guess you're kind of following that same structure as you did in the fall for at least 1 month. Then it sort of tapers off with how much you're doing that stuff, and it goes way more into you got game time. So I'd say a month of that, you're doing live at bats when you throw, you're competing, you're trying to earn your stripes, get your spot in the field. And then once spring season starts, everything goes out the window. There's chaos, there's cancellations, there's reschedulings. You don't know when you're playing, you don't know when you're going to pitch in the game. You name it, it's chaos. With my team, we never were allowed to fly. If you haven't checked out that video, I went through and tallied every single mile that we traveled on a bus. It was enough. I'm not going to tell you the number. You can go watch the video. But it was enough to go around the equator of Earth 3 times on a bus. That's how much we traveled across the nation in my 4 years of college baseball. You got to factor in 2 travel days every week. So those days are basically shot because I know me, when I would try to do homework on the computer on a bus, I would get very motion sick. So that was like not an option. And I had to be very, very locked in on Mondays for making sure I was on top of all my schoolwork. You're going to miss a ton of class. Our school didn't have online pretty much, so everything was in person almost entirely. There was a couple classes where you could work with the guys, but most of the time it was either you saw the material in class or you just didn't get the material, and you got to make the most of what you can. So I'm in class like maybe on a Tuesday, maybe on a Thursday, maybe on a Wednesday, depending on if we have midweek games or not. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday are always shot because you have 3 hours to warm up, 3 hour warm up at the field starting early in the morning. You just traveled, you got in there the night before. You're there at the field all day. And then all you want to do when you get back is maybe if you have time for homework, but usually you're shot where it's like you're not going to put up great quality for your homework. So those 3 days are pretty shot, and Sundays you leave wherever you're at. So if we went down and played Florida, we're driving home through the night Sunday into the morning Monday. Don't get back till about noon on Monday, and then we got to go to class like as quickly as we get back. Tuesday we do class, but if you're doing midweeks, usually you have a midweek on a Tuesday or Wednesday, or sometimes you have Tuesday and Wednesday, and they can both be away. So that's another whole affair where you could be traveling to Dartmouth one day and then you go to Fordham the next day, 2 completely different directions, and you got to go to both games after you got back from Florida. It's chaos. So school is basically not a thing. You're trying your best to make sure you pass everything. You're doing all your homework, but attending class, you're like hardly ever in there. So it's hard to pick up on material because me personally, I'm better when I listen to material than try to read it. So that was tough. It's absolute chaos. All the focus goes to winning. So in the fall, it's focused on development, getting everybody to be in a position where they could be a useful asset. But if you're not producing when you go out there, you're not an option. Plain and simple. So it's either you eat or you get eaten. Pretty simple. Whoever produces plays. This can deal with emotional turmoil with some kids where they just like lose their minds. They're not happy. They think they should be playing. That can cause issues with inter-team personalities, and it becomes chaos. But I would say in terms of what's required of you on a weekly basis, this is like a full-time job, at least in baseball with how many games we play. We're we're on the road at least 48 hours a week when you're doing those Florida travels. And that's only sitting on the bus. Then you got the games. Those are full day affairs. So you can basically cut out 5 days a week for just baseball alone. And then when you factor in the fact that you got school to do, which is for some kids, that's their full-time thing where they got to be really focused and locked in to get good grades. Doing all that at the same time is chaos. And it can be very difficult. That's why you got to be smart about what majors you pick. You want to make sure that you can do something that's manageable, especially if you're going to get yourself into a situation where you want to play a college level sport. It can be very busy. It can be very challenging. I would definitely go out and be smart about what situation you're heading into, because it's going to test you. It's going to be tricky. And if you really want to do this, this is basically what your schedule is going to look like. This may be a little more difficult than the people that fly, but this is a possibility of what your schedule could look like if you really want to play a college sport. So be ready for that. I'm not saying don't play college sports, because I had a great time. I made great memories. It was something that I enjoy to do and I'm still extremely passionate about. So I'm not discouraging, but I want to be real and transparent. Like, it's definitely not for everybody. And this is what your stuff's going to look like. So if you don't like that, you're not on board with that, it may not be for you. And that's okay. But be smart. And I hope this steers you in the right direction for whichever direction you want to go, to inspire you and sort of tell you this is what you're looking at. So that's what my schedule looked like as a player. I hope it's a little more straightforward for you guys, but that's what we're looking at. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, be sure to subscribe. We're on a mission to reach 100,000 subscribers before 2026. I can't thank you guys enough for the support, and we'll see you next time.